by your name, there are miracles. Your love is greater than the fears that we hold to. By your wonder you have opened wide the gates of heaven and the earth collide. We've seen you move and there's nothing you can't do. King of heaven, come and fill this place with your presence. Let our hearts awake, we are desperate for your kingdom come. Breathe revival, let the darkness run. We're gonna see the God of empty graves. Speak a word that calms the wind and waves. We're gonna see the dry bones come alive. We're gonna see the place where fire falls. Holy Spirit, tearing down these walls by the power of the resurrected Christ. King of heaven, come and fill this place with your presence. Let our hearts awake, we're desperate for your kingdom come. Bring revival, let the darkness run. King of heaven, come and fill this place with your presence. Let our hearts awake, we're desperate for your kingdom come. Bring revival, let the darkness run. Oh, the King has come, the King has come with a wild love, a wild love to awaken us. Oh, the King has come, the King has come with a wild love to awaken us. You awaken us, King of heaven. Come and fill this place with your presence. Let our hearts awake, we're desperate for your kingdom come. Breathe revival, let the darkness run. King of heaven, come and fill this place with your presence. Let our hearts awake, we're desperate for your kingdom come. Breathe revival, let the darkness run. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, come.
Seated above, enthroned in the Father's love, destined to die, poured out for all mankind. God's only Son, perfect and spotless one. And he never sinned, but suffered as if he did. And all authority, every victory this plan. You're sending us out, light in this broken land. There's all authority, every victory is yours. Savior, worthy of honor and glory, worthy of all our praise. You overcame, Jesus, awesome and powerful forever, awesome and great is your name. You overcame, we will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Everyone overcome. We will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Everyone Savior, worthy of honor and glory, worthy of all our praise. You overcame, you overcame, Jesus, you
Take heart, he has overcome. Whew. You can't beat that, can you? How is everyone? Having fun? Learning a lot? Are you going to overcome? Okay, we're done. No, sorry. I was just teasing. Sorry. Few more things. So, let's have a little fun here for a minute. How many of you first time to an annual conference? Whoa! Whoa! That's awesome. All right, let's see. How many of you have served in this ministry more than 10 years? Okay, maybe I should do it the other way. Okay, how many have only served less than 2 years? Oh, there's a few. Welcome. Welcome. Awesome. Awesome. All right, how many served more than 20 years? All right, watch this. How many served more than 30 years? You know I'm going to get down and it's going to be those three ladies right there. I just know it. How many served more than 35 years? We're down to 4. 5? Who's raising their hand over there? I can't see you. I should have known. All right. 35 years plus, stand up. All right, no, stay up. I mean, stay up here, guys. Come on, we got to whittle you down. 36? 36 years. 36 years. 36. Still 36, all of you. 37. There's like 200 years standing up here. Oh, I didn't mean that the wrong way. What did I get to? 38? 37. We lost one. 38. $39. Come on. Wow, 40 years. Are you at 40? 40? 41. Wait, we're not that old. Okay, she started when we started, is what she's telling us. Wow. Emma, you got beat. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? You know, okay, for all of you that's only been here a couple years, when it gets in your blood, 46 years is what we expect. So for everybody here, 46 years, and then you can be done, okay? I think that's fair. I don't see what the problem is here. Wow. So I think that just indicates again that the value of networking with one another, because there is a lot of experience in this room. You saw how many hands went up with 10 and 20 and 30 and now 40. And so, wow, there's a lot of knowledge sitting in this room that we can learn from and grow and prosper. And I'm just guessing, but in those years that you've served, have you had to overcome just a few little things? Maybe one? 5 or 6. Okay, all right. Just in 40 years, 5 or 6. Okay, got it. But, you know, if you think about it, and you think about what God has done in this ministry, isn't it phenomenal? Just the experience and the heart. And, yeah, it is sort of like it gets in your blood. It's like a good disease or something, you know? It's like there. Do not tell everybody I called Kairos a good disease, okay? Oh, wait, we're recording this. What am I thinking? Anyway, so how do we overcome? We talked about a couple of these, but I want to remind you of these principles that we talked about last night, because it's so important. That is, as you sang in the songs, and as you saw in that video, the only way that we really overcome is through our faith, that we're focused on Jesus Christ. right? And we talked about that last night, and I hope you're hearing that throughout the workshops, and I know you're hearing it up here in the mornings, in the morning worship time. And, it is so critical that we do not lose that focus. Okay, and as we keep talking about that, and as the video showed, he has overcome. We have already won. So what is it that we fear that stops us from doing everything that he asks us to do? Sometimes I have to ask myself that question. What is stopping me from being obedient if he's already won? Isn't it amazing? And all I can tell you, it's that little voice of doubt that gets in our head. It's sort of like what the speakers talked about this morning. It's when we let all of those little things of I can't get in there, instead of realizing he has already won this battle. All I got to do is follow him. I don't know about you, but that's a comforting thought to me. You too? So keep your focus. I tell people all the time, if you're in a hard place or you're squabbling in your advisory council, squabbling, that's a North Carolina word, by the way. That's does anybody else use squabbling? Okay, good. Sometimes I just comes out. Quarreling, squabbling, little spats, however you want to call it. Let me give you my best piece of advice. Stop and pray. Stop and pray. And if it still doesn't help, then pray for each other, whoever you're battling with. Because you got to cast him out so that Jesus can overcome. Okay? Because he's already won it, but you got to get him out so that we can get focused back on him. Okay? So call me anytime when you're like, okay, we squabbled and we prayed. I want to hear those kinds of stories of how we resolved this. Was we stopped and we prayed for one another, and we said, Jesus, you come into this. Because when we start squabbling with each other, it doesn't mean we're wrong. It means we're not focused. Because you might be right, but it may be that we're not doing it in the right way. So just think about that a little bit. We talked about a little bit, we got to focus on who we are as Kairos and keep what we do, right? We don't drift and we don't start doing other things and going, we're going to go over here and do this. We've got these 3 awesome programs. Awesome programs, right? So why would we mess with what God's given us that we know works? Does anybody have any doubt that this works? So let's keep it and let's focus on who we are as Kairos, what we do, what our programs are about, and who we're serving, right? We talked about that. Remember who Kairos is serving. And I want to add a 4th one tonight. And the 4th one is who we serve with. Who are we partnering with? Okay? The prisons, the chaplains, institutions, the youth facilities, administrators, right? The Department of Corrections, the Department of Juvenile Justice, the churches. All of those are partners with us that sometimes we need to focus on them. We need to focus on relationships. Just like we talked about, we need to focus on relationship with one another. First with him, then with each other. Then with those that we serve and those we serve with. Would you agree with that? And sometimes when we actually look at it that way, we as I said, we've got to look around and we've got to go, you know what? I'm serving with you. I get to serve with each and every one of you. What a privilege. What a privilege that is. Would you agree it's a privilege to serve with other Christians that love the Lord and love this ministry? And just as important, and they love those people that we're serving. Those men and women inside, those boys and girls in the youth facilities, and those women of the incarcerated. It's because we love them, don't we? And so that's why we listen, love, and we go in and do that. And then, you know what we know? That God just blesses our socks off for doing it, don't they? I mean, I don't even have any socks anymore because he blessed them all off. So focusing on those graduates, So many times we can get distracted in what we're doing and things that we forget. It really is about them. I mean, we don't do this for us. We get blessed by it, but we're really doing it for them. The graduates, whether that's Kairos outside, Kairos inside, Kairos torch, right? We need to focus on those warden and superintendents and the relationship with them. The chaplains, Federal Bureau of Prisons. We are in federal prisons, and maybe there's more opportunities with them. The Department of Juvenile Justice, it's a partner with us, and the Department of Corrections. And of course, there's the churches, and we can name many, many more. But I just want us to think about, for just a second, the importance of that relationship that we have with those facilities that we serve in. Okay? Some of you have made friends with the chaplain or the warden or the head of security or the program administrator. Insert titles here, right? And it's really a profound thing. And I love it when I hear first people we call is Kairos. Love it. But one of the things I just want us to think about is it's all about relationships. So we're talking about relationship with Jesus, and we're talking about a relationship with each other. We're talking about relationship with the people we serve, and then we're talking about relationship with the people we serve with, such as the Department of Corrections and all that list. And so when we think about relationships in that way, sometimes it actually looks like this. So I want you to just think about that image for a second. Because sometimes there's some of us holding others up in order to get across a valley or a struggle or a situation. Just like sometimes we're reaching out that hand to pull somebody up, sometimes we're actually holding them up. Sometimes it's to create some kind of a bridge that we can help somebody get across. Sometimes it takes the people on the hill cheering the others on to get across. And so if we're really building the relationships, it's all working in harmony. So some are lifting up, some are cheering on, some are following, some are walking across, and then they turn around and help and cheer again. And so it's all there. And then guess what? Once those that's holding it up is through letting everybody across, they got to reach down and pull them up to help them up to the other side. So it all takes all of that team coming together, and sometimes we forget that it's not an individual sport, and it takes the relationships. So my first speaker tonight, I think, can address part of this, because he's from the Department of Corrections of Indiana, and he's a friend of Kairos. So David, would you come up and talk to us here tonight?
It truly is wonderful to be here tonight. And when Evelyn finally revealed the theme of overcome, it's like, okay, that gives me a lot to work with, because we overcome a lot in correction. And thinking of the passage, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Being in prison is pretty much a way of saying you got some trouble. You've had some troubles. You might need to rethink what you've been doing. But the great news is he has overcome the world. And don't ever lose sight of that. It gets discouraging. People fail, we fail, I fail. But we know the end result. The world has been overcome by Christ. Want to just for a minute talk about the bags. And we loved being able to do this because Indiana DOC loves Kairos. We value Kairos. And this was a no-brainer to have our plus units put together the bags, our Prison Industries did the printing, but I know there's a card in here saying, this was made and donated as a labor of love. Did anyone tell you anything about the prison where this is made? So this is a prison that has had individuals win awards at the state fair for quilting. They have given quilts that have been on display in the governor's office, in the vice president's residence. I got to present a quilt to Miss America. And you think, wow. They also did a really cool project where the family of every Hoosier serviceman who was killed in the War on Terror received a memorial quilt customized for their loved one. So this all started at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, and that's a maximum security male prison. They're like, oh, well, sewing, that's women. Well, no, it's not. But where the quilting came from, about 15 years ago, we had a volunteer who I think was also associated with Kairos, had taught in our plush unit, which is our faith and character housing unit. Happy to talk more about that. But at the end of their program, she gave every guy a square of fabric and said, write something, draw something on this that tells your story. And then she quilted them all together. And the guys were really touched and also amazed, like, wow, you took these scraps of paper or scraps of fabric and put them together. And I can't imagine ever being able to do that. Well, it's not that hard. I could even teach you guys. Would you? So, again, she was literally a little old lady. I've met her. And she taught them how to quilt. And it started off really simple. And they were making quilts kind of like homeless shelters. And she kept coaching. And they ended up being much better than her. My mother taught quilting for 25 years. And so I actually know something about it. And it's like, man, this stuff's great. They entered it into the state fair. They won. And it's all in the context of someone believed that they could make something better than what they had. And one of the guys wrote about quilting is significant because these are just scraps of fabric that aren't of much use to anyone. But when you bring them all together, it's something that's useful and beautiful. And that's what we are. So this was made by maximum security men. And I can't wait to get back out there and say, yeah, these were a hit. So it was our privilege to do this. And I actually took my mother out to visit the plush unit at Wabash Valley. And I like my mother. I love my mother. I would not take her into most cell houses in a maximum security prison, but I knew the way community had transformed these men that she'd be well treated and respected. And she donated a lot of fabric to them. They made a quilt for her, took a picture presenting it. It was a little irritating to realize that on my mother's refrigerator, there was a photo of 3 offenders and none of me, but at least I was there to see it. So, I got that going for me. As Evelyn said, my name's Dave Liebel. I'm the Director of Religious Services and Community Engagement for the Indiana Department of Correction. And several people have already asked, well, how did you get here? How do you get that job? And, well, DOC was hiring and I applied because I was looking for a job. But little background, I'm originally from Indianapolis, grew up north side suburbs of here. Nominally Christian because, well, I mean, we're not Jewish, we're not Muslim, so, you know, we're Christian. And mid-20s really had a spiritual awakening, found Christ, and got called into different things. I ended up doing about 4 years of missions work overseas, worked with a variety of faith-based nonprofits, was a church mission director, was a school administrator, and never crossed my mind to work for government. And ended a job with a mission agency and was back here looking for work and ended up being recommended by friends at church to, oh, the governor just started an Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. This was 2005 when that was a real buzz phrase of faith-based and community initiatives, and ended up going to work there. And through that, part of my job was reaching out to other state agencies and seeing what they were doing with the faith community. And it was really the Department of Correction that was doing a lot, relying on volunteers, creating opportunities. And it was interesting, and I got to know some people there. And when things started falling apart at my previous agency, like, yeah, if you know of anything, well, friend said, yeah, our director of religious services is looking for a deputy. Applied, interviewed, hired. My initial assignment was implementing a federal grant to promote healthy fatherhood and responsible marriage. So I'm with the DOC promoting healthy marriage and responsible fatherhood. At the time I had no children. 2 weeks after I started, my wife asked for a divorce. So you think, wow, you must have known a lot about corrections to make up for these other gaps in your resume. No, not really. I knew nothing about corrections. Now, I had seen The Shawshank Redemption at least twice. So I was familiar with the concept. Had watched, I think, the first 2 seasons of Prison Break. Season 3, don't bother, jump the shark. And I'd gone to church with a guy who spent 6 months in federal prison for mortgage fraud. So that was pretty much it. And when I was given this opportunity tonight, but, you know, what have I had to overcome, including, like I said, a total ignorance about prisons, how they work, who's in them, who works in them. And yeah, I've been doing this 16 years now, and I've got one of the best jobs I could ever imagine. And I've met some of the best people as volunteers, as co-workers, and as inmates. Just because you're in prison doesn't mean you're a bad guy. Flip side of that, just because you're not in prison doesn't mean you're a good guy. So it was a steep learning curve, and what part of my job was we were conducting 2-day marriage seminars for incarcerated men and their wives or girlfriends. And it was federally funded, and it actually did really well. But I had to learn the culture of prison. And this is where a foreign missions background helped. realizing quickly that every prison has its own culture, that what works one place may not work someplace else. And also that you think you know what's going on, but there's often things that just fly right by you because you don't know what they are. You miss a lot of the cues. You don't know that, oh, you've actually done something offensive because they're being polite and you're being clueless. So some very kind people taught me a lot along the way. Basics include, we all know the phrase, well, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. That does not work in prison. To use the missiological term, prison is a high context society. Things are done for a particular reason, even if most people don't even remember the reason. Things are done a certain way for a purpose. America in general is a very low context society. Yeah, we do it this way, but hey, boy, that seems like kind of a cool thing to try. Well, let's do it that way. That's a great part about America. In prison, you got to ask permission. And there may be reasons that we don't want to do something. You look at what the public expects of us. First thing, don't let anybody escape. I mean, that's kind of job one. You can't really preach or program to somebody who's escaped. So, when we talk about safety and security, we're serious about that because that is a big part of this. Public also doesn't want us to keep people we're not supposed to keep. So, the administrative part's really important. People don't want prisoners tortured. Generally also don't want them coddled. And if we can do something to make their lives better, yeah, that's okay, but don't spend a lot of money on it. So Kairos really blends in nicely with that. You help increase our security. Anyone will tell you a Kairos weekend is generally a quiet weekend. There is peer pressure of, I haven't had my Kairos weekend yet, don't screw it up. I want to go, don't you ruin it for me. So it makes the prison a quieter place. It relieves staff from some of the things we have to do because you always come in well equipped. If you don't have enough volunteers, you drop the size of the weekend. And just your presence, it's not just preaching, it's showing God's people to everyone and the value of community. You talk to most people who are incarcerated, they didn't have such a great community. And you talk to guys who come back, they've been full of hope when they were released. They come back, well, what happened? Generally, it was a lack of community. They either went into the wrong community or they were isolated. Kairos as a path to the church addresses that. So we're high on Kairos. It's been incredibly helpful. So we've learned also about the value of transparency. So when we're working with Kairos, we ask permission. They ask permission. We talk through things, and it's an open forum to explain. Well, yeah, we hear what you're trying to do. Here's why we think that's not a good idea, but maybe there's another way we can do that to achieve the result. And I meet once a month with the Kairos state leadership. And partly because, again, I love the program. I did a walk to Emmaus back in 1991. I think it was Louisville Men's Walk number 72, and I sat at the table of Luke. But also, for me, it just makes sense of this is our largest single volunteer organization. Why would I turn down the opportunity to know them and help make plans together? And the Kairos reputation has also been really cemented by service. About 10 years ago, we were all set up for a Kairos weekend at Pendleton Correctional, one of our other maximum security male facilities. Thursday, they brought everything in, done the first night's meeting. Everything was good to go for the weekend. Friday morning, there was a murder. It was gang related, and the facility went on lockdown. And lockdown, nobody goes anywhere. And the Kairos leadership didn't go to the warden or the commissioner and say, well, but our guys are really good and this is a helpful program. So, we've already spent, $6,000 on food. So please, can we go ahead and do our weekend? We promise the guys will behave. None of that. They went to the warden and said, how can we help? And the warden's response was, I have to feed over 2,000 people 3 meals a day now, and I just lost most of my labor force. If you guys really mean it and want to help, come in and make sandwiches. They did. For the next 3 months? There were Kairos volunteers that went in and packed lunches, dinners. You think about feeding 2,000 people over 3 months. I think we calculated 17,000 loaves of bread and almost 8 pounds of bologna, but slight joke. But even people who weren't around then know that story. And when people think of Kairos, they think of service. They don't think of, they're going to come in, do their thing, and then they're gone and we never see them again. So you have value as an ongoing ministry. And it's not just the weekend. It's setting that pattern of discipleship, of being in a positive community that, we get a lot of groups that want to come in and preach. And the truth is, it's really, you almost have to work at not hearing the gospel if you're in prison. The challenge is, do you see people living out the gospel? And one of the things to overcome is most people don't want to go to prison. I never wanted to go to prison until I started working there. And most people spend their lives trying to avoid going to prison. So once you overcome that, which you've all have done, that also helps the incarcerated overcome their skepticism. Because, I draw a paycheck from the Department of Corrections. So they can explain away anything I do by, you're making the big bucks. I would have chosen another field, but, whatever. But still, I'm drawing a paycheck and hey, you're sincere, you mean well, but end of the day, you're paid to be here. When incarcerated men and women meet you, you're giving up your weekends. You had to do 40 hours of training for this, and you had to raise money for it to come into prison. Well, either you are the stupidest people that have ever walked through the gates of this prison, or you've got something pretty important to say. And again, that is something as staff that we can never do. You can come in and preach, and not only that, you can come in and live out your testimony. These relationships have paid off in trust. Keep open communication as best you can. Don't hesitate to reach out to the chaplains, wardens, and just say, hey, would you have a few minutes? Because I'd like to know how we can help you. And that'll open a lot of doors. Great example of the trust and the need for open communication. We had an incident at Plainfield Correctional a couple of years ago. One of the Kairos volunteers, they were all set up for the weekend, has his hands in his jacket pocket, finds a 9mm bullet. And he did the right thing and went to the chaplain and said, I just found, I was out shooting the other day. I found a bullet in my pocket. I didn't know it was there. What do we do now? And the chaplain reported it. And you think, well, okay, honest mistake. And that's what it was an honest mistake. But again, we have to kind of look at what's the worst thing that could be happening. Maybe some of those table legs weren't really table legs. Maybe a bunch of other guys have bullets they forgot in their pocket, and this guy just chickened out. That could be a really bad situation. So the warden was called, and they ended up searching all the volunteers, researching the equipment that had been brought in. They searched all the participants, and they went over the video footage from the x-ray machine, and it's like, yeah, the way the bullet happened to lay against the zipper, it looked like a pull tab on a jacket. So the warden said, hey, enjoy the rest of the weekend, and let it go on. That would have not have happened with almost any other ministry, because we don't have that level of trust and relationship. So thank you for being a trusting group. Now, one of the other things I'd encourage you of, don't hesitate to share bad news. And fortunately, the chaplains and the warden had called me and told me what was going on. So I called the state chair Monday morning. Where's Roger? And Roger answered the phone, and I said, hey, Roger, you know the difference between Barney Fife and a Kairos volunteer? He's like, no, what? Barney Fife is allowed to have one bullet in his pocket. He thought that was the oddest joke anyone had ever told, because no one had told him about what had happened over the weekend. So communication, get to know these people. Again, last thing I'd say is, remember, take time with the staff also. Nobody really dreams about growing up and working in a prison. And you look in the media, the TV shows, the brave police officers risking their lives to bring the perpetrators into custody. And then the brave prosecutors and judges who see that justice is done and this person is convicted of those heinous crimes. Then you look at the next TV series, and it's, well, noble savage, unjustly convicted, and now he's being treated by these Neanderthal prison guards. There's not a lot of positive portrayals. And honestly, what happens is, most people who end up working in prison, it's, well, I needed a job and they are hiring. Now, if that's the end of the story, that's kind of a sad story. But what should happen is once they get in, it's like, this is actually pretty meaningful and I'm pretty good at it and it makes a difference. Corrections is a wonderful career if you believe that people can change. If you don't believe that people can change and that they're defined by their worst moment, stay away from working in a prison, stay away from prison ministry, because you are going to be miserable. But if you want a chance to see, well, you will see how low people can sink. After just a couple of months around corrections, you stop saying things like, oh, nobody would ever do that. Because, yeah, I can show you who did that, and in fact, a couple of other things you haven't even thought of. But here's the beautiful thing. We get to see how high people can bounce back. Too long of a story, so I won't tell it, but one of the great things I got to do in my career, which is hopefully not over yet, I got to hire a chaplain who previously spent 10 years with us for shooting an 18-year-old girl in the face. And it wasn't an accident. He meant to do it. And, he's now one of our best chaplains. I would not have liked him the way he came in. I love him as a brother and friend now. So keep being an advocate for change. Thank you for the time, and welcome to Indiana.
Dave, I got to tell you, thank you first. But second of all, there's an awful lot of jealous state chairs and others of this that wish we want him, right? There's a lot of states that would love to have him, that with our relationship. So, as we move forward here a little bit, and even Dave talked about this a little bit. We talk about the overcome concept. Sometimes it's hard, isn't it? Sometimes it takes a lot of work. But I just want you to look at that photo for a second, because sometimes it just takes a little crack for something to sprout. Just a little crack. If you think back even to when Kairos started in 1976, it just was a little sprout where the founder went, wow, I just want to get in one prison. Just want to do one. And they did one, and it worked. It worked, and then word got out, and they started getting invited. But it took that one little sprout in what was a very dry, barren land, right? It looked a lot like that. That's what it looked like. It was just a little sprout, a little ray of hope, just overcoming that little problem. And if we look at our world today, 37 states, 9 international countries, right? And it's grown to this thing that those little sprouts just keep sprouting, and a new little sprout comes up and keeps growing. And so right now, with those little sprouts, here's a prayer request. We're working on 3 states to open. 3. Michigan, Montana, and Nevada. Now, for all of you all that's helped start a new state, it's not an easy task. If you think it's hard to start a new advisory council in a place that you've already existed in, you're sort of going to a very barren land. And you got to find that little crack of people. And as Dave said, you don't always run across people who go, I want to go in prison, right? Pick me. So we really have to deal with that a whole lot, of finding those leaders that have that heart and that passion. And, and look at those things and finding that team that wants to campaign that. So pray for these individuals that are working on this. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Well, that's okay. We got to try. We got to try to overcome that. Sometimes it takes a little longer than others. Sometimes it just happens, and it's like, how did that happen so fast? So we've got 3 more opportunities on our books right now that we've got potential people working to grow that. So I want you to pray for those for us, because there's a little seeds being planted in that dry, barren ground that's sprouting right out, just like that photo. And then, one of the things within our strategic plan was, we called it Vision Priority number 7, was to develop and, if feasible, implement a strategic structure and a growth plan for international countries. So, we have now officially trained 4 new countries on how to do Kairos Inside. They're all in Africa: Nigeria, Malawi, Uganda, and Kenya. If all goes well, in the next year or so, they will have teams formed and they will be doing Kairos Inside. So 4 more to pray for. So we're getting ready to go from 37. Well, maybe we can go to 40. And from 9 to actually 12. Now you go 9 plus 4. Evelyn can't do math. Well, unfortunately, we have lost all of our leadership in Peru. So, unfortunately, we don't have anybody implementing the program there. So if somebody knows somebody in Peru, let me know. But as of right now, we will be taking them off of our roster. So we're going from 9 to 12, not 13. Okay? But there's still hope. Maybe we'll get it back. Never give up. You don't give up if you're going to overcome, right? So the praise is that these 4 countries, as I said, they've now personally, as leaders, experienced the weekend themselves. We have trained them by putting them through the program. We've trained them by training them to be advanced Kairos trainers. And we have trained them on Kairos and how we do our work. So now they have the mission of going back and recruiting people and setting up relationships with prisons, so that we can finish training them on some more, because, we're not going to abandon them now, because we're going to keep helping them and doing things with them, so that we can actually establish Kairos Inside in the prisons in these 4 countries. So that's where we're at with our growth strategy for international. We have the plan. We're starting to implement the plan, and we have 4 countries that we are opening today. So that is God helping us overcome in spite of all this stuff. Pretty cool, huh? So, as I said, as this lay-led Christian ministry in 37 states, we will now go to 12. And you'll start seeing our materials slowly change as we get to it, to start adding those into our reports and into our list and the things that are going on. So keep praying for that group of people, and pray for those 3 new states to come on board also. Praise God and hallelujah. So, we looked like this, and every little sprout that we can get growing in a barren land, God will grow it up, and all of a sudden, it looks just like this, right? Just like this. Think about it. There was a group of a couple, then there was 10 or 12, and then I think they had a team of 20, And now we've grown to 30,000 volunteers. It's operating around the world. And now we're adding, hopefully, states and definitely countries to what God is doing. Do you think that we will overcome? So, you know, as David was talking and sharing from the DOC, he mentioned that very often people that are incarcerated, they have a lot to overcome. And he mentioned some of those things. And it's very, very interesting when we hear their stories, isn't it? Not only is it encouraging to us, keeps us motivated when we hear their success and what God has done in their life. Would you agree? So I got one of those other treats for you here. But it's actually one of those treats that we don't get to hear from very often because this is Kairos Inside Women. So, Michaela, would you come share with us?
There's a lot of people. Oh, Dave, by the way, I don't believe it's baloney. Okay? My name is Michaela, and I am inmate 264116 from Indiana Women's Prison. I was released about 2 years ago, and in about 2018, I was blessed to be in this program. I am grateful and thankful every day for the women that came in there. What they did was they instilled the littlest bit of hope in a hopeless place. They made us feel so loved, me, and I was at the bottom of all that I could be at. When I came in, I was on an 8-year sentence to do 6 years. I was in there for dealing a narcotic drug, and I felt like my life was over. I had an amazing family, a husband at home waiting for me with my children. None of that mattered, and I was just in complete despair. I decided that I was going to do the Plus program. And while I was in there at Rockville, they said that there was Kairos, and I had no idea what that was, none whatsoever. And being an addict, you know, and on the brink of suicide, and, you know, just the lowest that I could ever get, I joined Kairos. And what all of you did for me and all these other people, I know personally has changed my life forever. You show us love, which we don't know at that point when we enter those prison gates. It's so dark and so lonely. And I want to say thank you to all of you, because I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for all of you, you know. When I walked through those gates in 2017, I was beaten down beyond. I had had the worst possible thing happen. I ended up with a disease called osteomyelitis, which is a bone infection from being an addict. I had my left collarbone, upper 2 ribs, and half my sternum removed with a 5-inch hole in my chest. And for all intents and purposes, I should have been dead. But God had a plan. He saved my life, and he put me in prison. And for that, I will forever be grateful. While I was in there, these ladies, I love them. I just love them. They bring out the best in us. They make us learn to love ourselves in the worst situation possible. You know, Dave mentioned how, why would anybody want to come in there, you know, and all of this. And the fact of the matter is, it is scary. It's very scary, not just for you guys coming in, but for us being in there, you know. And what you all do is you give us hope that there are good people in this world that truly love us. And it's not what's behind those fences. And you give us an opportunity to really change our lives. That's the most beautiful blessing you guys could ever do for us behind those gates. Being in there, you guys planted, there was a seed planted, and it was up to me to water it. And glory to God, every day, He showed me the way. You know, He allowed me to be vulnerable, to dig deep, to rely on people when I was used to pushing people away. And He taught me how to lead with my heart and my soul. Every day I'm grateful that I overcame all of the past and everything else. Overcome is a big topic for me. I have 6.5 years clean this month. With that said, if you would have asked me 6.5 years ago, I would have never thought I'd be standing here doing this. Ever. Every day, God shows up for me in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's waking up in the morning to being thankful that I get another day on this earth, or a nice conversation with a friend out of nowhere when I need it, you know. I came home and I was petrified. And all I did was pray. And I started to go to work. And I cut hair at Great Clips in Jasper, just so you know. I got my degree in prison. They gave me a trade. Come see me, okay? But the fact of the matter is that God gave me a purpose. God made me believe that I was worthy of love and that I could have the life that I desired, that He had for me in mind from the beginning, that I didn't know anything about. When I was born with a VSD. What that is a ventricular septum defect. It closed by the time I was 7 years old, so I never had to have open heart surgery. I was also diagnosed as a child as ADD. Never fitting in, never knowing which way was up. I always felt like I was on the outside looking in. My choices were my choices. And when it comes down to it, I can see now God was always walking right next to me. Never for a moment have I ever doubted His presence. And the one thing that holds still in my heart is the ladies that came into that prison taught me what faith was. I don't have to see Him to know He leads my life every single day, and I am grateful for everything He has done, and I am grateful for all of you, for what you do for us behind those gates. You guys have no idea how you impact us so much and make us feel so loved. When I got out, I was cutting hair. And all of a sudden, this perky little blonde walks in. Her name's Carla. She's right over there. She walks in, and she's sitting in my chair, and I'm cutting her hair. And I look at her, and I said, Carla? Kairos, Carla? And she said, yes. And I said, well, oh my goodness, I'm Michaela. I did that in Rockville. And so we built our relationship. And I ended up doing the walk to Emmaus. I'm number 64, Table of Esther. I got my bracelet on to prove it. Doesn't leave me. And we have kept our relationship through and through. Overcoming is a very big thing for me because everybody has their own obstacles. The one thing that I've learned throughout my years is that I have to take myself out of the equation and let Him lead. He speaks to me in ways that I can't even put into words, but my faith in Him knows that everything's always going to be okay. And I don't have bad days anymore. And that's because of you guys. You know, the love and support that you guys showed us in there and that little seed that you planted. I remember sitting on my bunk crying, just wanting something different. I'll do anything. And I woke up the next morning and things were different. I felt different. And I will tell everybody till the day that I pass away, I was delivered. And God, I'm grateful every day. Every day. Overcoming things is what all of us do best. You can't give up. You left foot, right foot through it, knowing that the end game is where we want to be. I just know in my heart that everything was going to be okay once I came back from the Kairos convention. I called my husband. Boy, we spent a lot of money on that, those phone calls. Whew, I'm surprised we didn't end up in bankruptcy. But God loved my husband. My husband went to prison in 2008 as well. She really wanted us to do a couples one, and I don't think he's very personable that way. Put him on the wrist right there. But bottom line is that, you know, he stayed by my side and he helped me through it. Sober, raising our daughter who was 2 years old when I left. He raised her for 5 years as a single dad. He was my rock, and he helped me overcome so much, and we grew in our faith together. And we still do, every day. That is our foundation. We wouldn't have that without you guys. Just takes so much. I know in this journey that we are capable of overcoming anything. Our thoughts, our actions. It's his call. And like she said earlier, it's hard, you know, to live his way. But if you take yourself out of the equation, it doesn't seem so hard. He has us all in the palm of his hands. He's already done this for us. I love you guys. I really don't have much more to say. I'm just grateful.
Does it make it worth it? Wow. You know, we haven't really talked about continuing ministry yet, have we? That's okay. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say a little bit about continuing ministry and its importance in this program, because it's an important aspect of the programs. You know, the fun and the impact that we know that makes, but it's the journey. And, you know, Michaela sort of implied it, of the coming back and the relationship. She may not have called it prayer and share or reunions, but it's the relationships that got built and things. And, you know, we hear it constantly. And Dave talked about it, of the, you know, we're not just in there and then gone. We're not only reliable to the facility, but we're reliable to those that we're serving. And the way that we're reliable is building that relationship and showing and demonstrating that accountability. And the only way we do that is when we're serious about doing our continuing ministry. So All I can do is encourage you that if you really want to help the people that we serve overcome, then make sure you serve well in continuing ministry. The weekend is very important, but the continuing ministry is what helps them on that journey. And it's the piece that really shows them that you care because you did come back. So in every one of our programs, we say, we'll be back. Make sure you mean it when you say it. Make sure you mean it. This is the heart of Kairos, is our continuing ministry. And that is where the impact happens. The weekend is the introduction. The continuing ministry is just that, the continuation of what we started, so that they can see us walking and loving them and caring, so that they can keep that hope, like what Michaela talked about. Folks, don't ever take that for granted of what we can offer there. Don't ever. So talk about it in your community. Share the importance of it. Share the need to actually have swap groups and prayer and share and the mentoring for Kairos Torch and the reunions, so that the groups can get together and see that. And you know the beauty of it is we're actually teaching them to lead it so that they're doing it without us. And isn't that the beauty of the program when it becomes theirs? That's what continuing ministry does. I can't emphasize that enough to us in what we're doing. So the weekends are fun. The continuing ministry and the weekends is even more fun and has greater impact. Don't ever, ever, ever forget that. It is the heart of it, because that's where the discipleship and the accountability is learned. Okay? Have you ever had somebody come up to you and say, okay, I'm going to help you with something, and you got 15 minutes? Okay? Well, I'm going to tell you, if all you're serving in is in the weekend, then you're coming up to them and saying, I'm going to help you, and I'm going to give you 15 minutes. Think about it for a minute, what I just said to you. Make sense? Let's give them all of it. Let's not just give them the 15 minutes. And yeah, I know our weekends are longer than 15 minutes. But you get my point, I hope. So, it's always exciting when we look at our continuing ministry. And, you know, the other beautiful thing about continuing ministry is you don't need as many people, right? So you got an opportunity to rotate. Some of the most successful continuing ministries that I've seen operate is, and I'll use Kairos Inside for the example, is when you set up a prayer and share rotation. So everybody gets a chance to go in a little bit and not expect it a lot. So it doesn't take as much commitment. And then you have the reunions, and you have a group that goes in, and every month there's a group, and you have some stability. So everybody gets to be a part of it, but not everybody has to have the responsibility of every single time. And that's part of the beauty of it, is that on that 6-month rotation, then we can go in and do another weekend, and we can build that community again, and then we can bring them in through prayer and share a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and then we can build the whole community through a reunion. And then we keep doing it, and we keep doing it, and we keep doing it. And then sometimes we hear that there's a prison of 450 people, and 250 of them have gone through Kairos before we know it. And what do you think that prison starts looking like? Isn't that what we want to see? Or it's a prison of 1,000, and we start hearing that 400 have now gone through the program because we've been in there so long, and we continue this, and we continue this. But if we're not doing the full program, we're not giving them all that God has given us. We're just giving them a little piece. Let's do it well. Let's overcome and help them overcome to the max of everything that can happen, because they deserve to know all of God and everything He's got to offer. And they can only do that, as Michaela said, if somebody's in there sharing it. And the same goes for Kairos Outside, and the same goes for Kairos Torch. Just go ditto in all of the importance. And we all hear, and we heard last night from from Janice on the Kairos Outside, and the importance of what that community did to help support her. And then those swap groups and those reunions and what that can do, because it's lonely when you have a loved one incarcerated. So, guys, if you really want to love them, give them your all. Please help us give them our all. So, you know, as we sort of think about this whole theme of overcome, and we hear what David said about the Department of Correction and the impact that they see that we can make on the prison, and we hear from Michaela, and we heard from the group last night, and we keep looking at all of these activities, and we see that overcome is so much more than just an action word of what we do. It's an action word of what God has done, and it's an action word of what happens to the people we serve. And that makes it really even more powerful, doesn't it? It's an action that happens because these people are overcoming things that we probably don't ever understand. But through the grace of God and the love of God that we have the honor to share, we help them overcome obstacles. And by sharing our testimony of things that we've been challenged with, and hardships and good things and all of that, and sharing what's happened in our lives, we make God real and showing how He has helped us overcome something so that they can say, I can do that too. Isn't that an awesome, awesome thing? Because there's not a person in this room, I don't care if I know you or not, that has not had challenges and not had failures and not had situations that you've had to overcome. And it's by the grace of God that we overcome every situation. And that is awesome. And thank you for your service. And so my last treat for tonight is Charles. And part of my treat is Charles is going to talk about Kairos Inside and Kairos Torch. So Charles, come up here and share with us, would you?
Just a heads up, I'm not much of a public speaker. I was 18 years old, and I'll be 40 in September. But I was 18 years old when I nearly ended someone's life. And whatever reason I could give you for it is no good reason. I was sentenced to 45 years in prison. I spent a year in the county jail, and before I went to prison, you can just imagine the pain that I caused not only my victim, but his family and my family. When I was sentenced, I was transferred to a maximum security facility. I was at the Indiana State Penitentiary, which is Michigan City. It's a maximum security facility. And to tell you that I was walking with the Lord would be not true. I wasn't. But how many times in our lives does the Lord still walk with us in spite of it? I spent 4 years in Michigan City, and I was transferred when I got down to having 15 years remaining. You see, in Indiana, they have at that time, it was you would spend half of your sentence. So my 45-year sentence was actually suspended 5 for probation, and it was a 40-year sentence, do 20 years flat. So after spending 4 years behind the wall at Michigan City, I had an opportunity to be transferred. And that wasn't something that I was expecting. I was quite shocked by it. I went into the counselor's office and they said, "Where do you want to go? You're going to be transferred." Home. Straight up. Straight up. But let me tell you, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for home. I wasn't ready for it. And now there may have been some good people there behind the wall, which I'm sure there are. But I just wasn't living that life. So I didn't see so much of that. I saw a lot of negativity. So when I was transferred, one of the first things we asked the people when we got there, because I was transferred to CIF, which is the level 2 facility there in Pendleton. And one of the first things we asked there was, when's the last time someone was killed here? And the look on their faces when we asked that, because they realized we were coming from somewhere a lot different than what they were experiencing. You know, they said that doesn't happen here. People aren't killed here. When you walk a life of sin and you do things that you can't take back, you're going to find out that you can get all you want from it. What I'm saying is that I found out, you know, what scary really was. So to be in a place where people were getting out and you could see it, and then there wasn't an extreme amount of violence going on, it started to really foster that hope inside of me. I gave my life to Christ in 2008 at Christmas time. I appreciate the clapping, but let me expound on that. You see, at that time I was in segregation at this lower level facility and putting myself quite at risk to going back up to a higher level. And I had gotten a letter from my aunt telling me how much she believed in me and how she's praying for me. So a lot of times we don't see how many people are praying for us. But I know in my life, I've had a lot of prayer for me. So when I received that letter, and before I was saved, I experienced just this shame, just an overwhelming amount of shame. And when our sister here talks about feeling like you could take your, excuse me, like you could take your own life, I just felt like there was nothing I could do with the one I had. But God, God showed me that if I were to give my life to him, that I could have a new life in him. It wasn't long after I gave my heart to God that there was a Kairos sign-up sheet in my dorm. And I signed up. And I believe it was Kairos number 5. And I was an alternate for Kairos. But the Lord made a way to see that I got to be in that weekend. And for me, having newly been saved, and to witness these brothers come in, and to just pour out the Spirit of the Lord was just so overwhelming. And I knew in my heart that is what I wanted. To continue in the Lord and to be able to serve as they were serving. But that service doesn't start once we're out. It starts while you're inside. But it's an encouragement from our brothers and sisters who come in, and for us it was men who came in and served for us. But it was such an inspiration for us to keep that going. And when the weekend was over, it's just as Evelyn mentioned, they would rotate, and they would come in every week. There'd be 2, possibly 3, and sometimes only 1 volunteer. But just with that 1 or 2 volunteers, they were able to come in and we could have a weekly get-together where we sit and we talk with one another. And having that sense of community is a real vital aspect to our health and our walk with Christ while we're inside. So I had an experience as I continued through my incarceration to be leveled down. Thank you, sister, for this Kleenex. But when I leveled down, I had signed up for a level 1 facility called IREF, which is no longer, sadly, open. But I signed up for that facility and I wasn't granted to go there. Instead, I went to another level 1 facility. And at this time, I had been saved for 5 years, or roughly about that time. But when I went to that level 1 facility, I knew that it wasn't for me. It just was, the atmosphere was just too frantic and intense. So in order to be able to go to a different facility, I had to do something where it's called taking a write-up, where you get a write-up in order to bump your level up. I assumed that I would be transferred back to the Pendleton facility, which was next door to the level 1 facility that I was at. But I wasn't. I was transferred to a facility in Westfield, which is one of the rougher prisons that I've experienced. Even with my experience at Michigan City, that facility is just a really hard place to do time. There was a Kairos there. And even through my darkest times after being saved, And in that facility, which was a dark time for me, I still had the hope that Jesus had given me. And the Kairos was just there when I needed them to be. So I was able to participate in a reunion weekend. And even though I didn't know those volunteers, I knew the ministry. So for me, it just gave me hope. And sometimes that's all you're holding on to while you're inside. It's just this bare thread of hope. And for me, that was my experience because of the years of incarceration I had spent. And at the time that I was released, from that facility, the time that my level dropped, there was a counselor. His name was Mr. Deloney. I remember his name. His name was Mr. Deloney. And I had told him what had happened to me in the previous facility. And he told me, he said, you just have to remain conduct clear for a year. And he said, I'll get you to IREF. And he made good on his promise after that year. And he got me to that level 1 facility. And let me tell you, there was a Kairos there too. So for me, I may not have seen all the familiar faces that I had known throughout the years, but I got to meet new faces. I got to meet new people, new brothers in the ministry. I was released in 2017. And I don't know if I could have been any more ready. Because I feel like even though I went through this experience there at Westfield, I feel like God allowed me to go through that so I could see that I could handle myself under hard situations and not act out violently. My wife reminded me this evening. I was invited to a birthday party from a Kairos brother, and that's where I met my wife. I've been invited as a participant of the Great Banquet by Kairos members. I was asked if I would be interested in serving in the juvenile ministry from a Kairos brother. So when we talk about continuing ministry, we all have a role to play. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for having me here tonight. God bless you.
So the rest of that story, you notice he mentioned he was invited. He did more than just invited. He's doing it. So he forgot to tell you a key part. So now he's going in and working with those youth and Kairos Torch. Isn't that awesome? From an 18-year-old that could have probably used Kairos Torch back then to a young man who's given his heart back. Thank you for that. Wow. Weren't you almost crying with him there? I needed to borrow a tissue. Who gave that tissue out there? Thank you. You know, I know these guys, when I call them and I talk to them, and then, I talk to them out here, they're like, I'm so nervous. And I'm like, it's your story. Just tell it. That's all we want to hear. We want to hear what God's doing in your life. And then they both do a beautiful job. But you know what? The interesting thing is, I know you all heard it. And you know I was setting you up with that continuing ministry speech, didn't you? Okay. But from the standpoint, did you notice the importance if there was Kairos everywhere he went? And they welcomed him. Wasn't that a beautiful thing? I wish we could say we were always in all the prisons that everybody got transferred to, but maybe one day God will help us overcome that so we can actually say that in every location. But the beauty of the people being there just when you need them, isn't that an awesome thing? And you heard that from both. And that's what you, my friends, are doing. You're being the hands and feet of Jesus just when they need it in their dark spots. And just when they need it, even when they found Jesus and they need a little bit more encouragement and a little bit more hope in a dark place. And then praise God when we have that opportunity to be that. Isn't that an awesome, awesome thing? So my friends, we've got 3 awesome programs. And we know that they make a huge difference. And like I said last night, you all realize that on a direct basis, in a normal year, whatever that means, we're not quite there again yet. There's roughly 28,000 people per year that go through one of our 3 programs. Okay? Now, maybe all of them don't have that same impact right away. Maybe all of them didn't just become a Christian and God put a Kairos right in front of them, like what we just heard. Maybe that some of them reject it. Maybe that some of them, it takes 5 or 6 years. I've heard stories from people. I went to Kairos in whatever year, and 5 years later, I finally got it. But we planted the seed. Maybe it just wasn't the time that God needed to put a little bit more water for it to sprout a little bit more. Maybe it was years and years later. We don't know. That's God. That's God's job. But if we can just go in there and do our part and be those hands and feet and show that, do you think, just maybe, that we can help overcome what Satan has set up for bad with the love and forgiveness of Jesus Christ? We will overcome. So let me just remind you, how do we overcome? By focusing on Jesus. Then we conduct Kairos with excellence. Then we make an impact on the world. On the world, my friends. On the world. Because the people, like what you just heard from, they go out and make a difference. And their family has a difference. And then the next person gets a difference. And they make a difference in the facility. They make a difference when they get home. They make a difference in how they're serving. And so how many people do you think every year, even if half of those 28,000 are making a difference, what is really happening with the army that God is helping produce? Have you heard the saying? There is a revival coming out of the prisons. And that's an awesome thing. And we get to be a privilege to be a part of that. So, that, my friend, is how I think we overcome. Would you agree? So, will we overcome? Let's say it together. We will overcome. So, how does Kairos normally close a program? Oh, you know that one. I thought I was going to teach you a new song tonight. How about if we all stand up and hold hands and let's go to Surely the Presence. Do we know this one? Sing it with all you got, because we've overcome, because God has overcome.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and His grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Truly the presence of the Lord is in this place. In the midst of His children, the Lord said He would be. It doesn't take very many. It can be just 2 or 3. And I feel that same sweet spirit that I've felt oft times before. Surely I can say that I've been with the Lord. Let's do that chorus. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and His grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Let's do that second verse. There's a holy hush around us as God's glory fills this place. I've touched the hem of His garment. I can almost see His face, and my heart is overflowing with the fullness of His joy. I know without a doubt that I've been with the Lord. Chorus. Surely the presence, get 'em up, of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and His grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in the... Can we do that chorus one more time? Chorus. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and His grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Beautiful.
So let me pray us out. As we stand here, Father, in your presence, we feel your presence, and thank you, and hallelujah, Father, for you being with us each and every day, right beside us, right with us, guiding each and every step, no matter what, no matter whether we're in the valley or on the mountaintop or whether we're climbing that hill. Father, we just praise you, and we know that you are the one who has overcame the world, and because of that, we have the ability to overcome because our belief and our faith in Jesus Christ the Lord. Father, I pray for each and every person here, each and every community, every advisory council, every state, every country that is represented, and all of those that are missing in this wonderful ministry called Kairos. And Father, I ask you to bless them, to give them the guidance, to make an abundance of volunteers so that we may do more and more of this mighty ministry that you've given us the privilege to serve in. Father, I ask that you be with the rest of this conference, that we may learn, may we take it home, and may we help others be encouraged through what we have shared here in these past few days. And Father, we just want to glorify you. We thank you for the privilege to serve. We thank you for the privilege to call you Abba, Father. Father, we love you and thank you for loving us. And we know that we will overcome by the blood of the Lamb. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you.